I guess the fall off between, I guess, Amarius Mims, who, people have had an issue with it, not because they're saying Amarius Mims is a bad player. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's getting lost throughout this. There are people out there that are saying, it was a bad pick. It was whatever. Guys, we're saying this because not we're saying this, but people are saying this because there's not enough film out there on him. And I think the also thought behind the process behind it was, obviously you have the soft tissue injury. So you wonder, how does that play a factor? I think every single time you saw Marius Mims on tape, which is just an 8-game sample size, you're pretty ecstatic. You're pretty ecstatic about what you saw, because in that short span of what you did see, it did show elite potential. And I think that's the biggest thing that I want to get Bengals fans to see the light on. And I think most people are starting to come around to it now, but I think it's important for us to dissect these picks and kind of go through the process. I think people are just down on the thought process because, hey, we want to see more of them. You wish you could just turn on, look up Amarius Mims on YouTube and you could see just mountains of highlights over and over and over and over again. The plus size thing about this, guys, is he has the size. The word I hate the most, if you guys have been following me for quite some time, is intangibles. But Amarius Mims has what you're looking for in terms of the intangibles. The short amount of film that we do have on him, he dominated the competition at a high level. The biggest thing that I think I love about the Amarius Mims pick, guys, Marissa, Daniel, team, everybody in the chat, was I think that he couldn't have landed in a better situation. I mean, you mean to tell me you're pairing him up with guys who his style truly resembles? Guys like Orlando Brown Jr., guys like Trent Brown. And those are the guys he has to go off of and learn from. It's a great situation if you ask me, man. I think Amarius Mims landed in a great situation. And if he's going to be something anywhere, it's going to be in Cincinnati. And I think any team that would have drafted him would have probably had the same concerns because of the lack. But I do agree. And I love what Adam Bullock, I appreciate you, Adam, you're always in the chat. He says he wouldn't have been there if we had all that film. And I agree with him. I think Amarius Mims, and there were some circles that were saying he would have been a top 10 pick.
Mm-hmm.
That's how highly this guy was viewed amongst league circles. But the cool thing is we got a true right tackle. We got a guy that we are like, oh, this is our right tackle of the future. We obviously have Orlando Brown here for the future. Trent Brown is here for right now. I love the pick for those reasons. I've come around to understand the Bengals' thought process. And I'm honest with you guys. Had you not taken him there, let's say you did go a Jared Verse or whoever, the next best guy. Maybe you guys wanted the Bengals to draft Johnny Newton. Like I wanted the Bengals to draft Jerzon Newton, but the drop off from that would have been so massive if you think about it. So those are my thoughts on the Amarius Mims pick. Dan, you have anything else that you want to add on that? I feel like we should.
Definitely. Amarius Mims, when we have this conversation, you have to ask yourself, this is what I, slept on and boiled it down to. What's the alternative, right? Let's actually talk about that. What's the alternative? Graham Barton was on the board. Troy Fautanu was on the board. In my opinion, Amarius Mims, if you're looking at a strictly tackle, Amarius Mims, by far and away, his potential is by far and away better than theirs. His tape was by far and away better than theirs. You look at Troy Fautanu, very agile, great footwork, but he wasn't a physically imposing offensive tackle. He's more of a smaller tackle, 6'4", 6'5". So with him, if you pick him, you're discussing, all right, he can maybe start on the interior, but when you project him to be your starting right tackle of the future, there's a little more question marks. And Graham Barton, the same thing. He played some center. Mm-hmm. He was productive, but there was many times where he was getting, absolutely bullied, whether it's, his finesse moves as an edge rusher was, getting around and beat him to the inside with the counter move. Amarius Mims' tape showed you the potential. He could be one of the best offensive tackles. So for me, that rules out the rest of the offensive linemen. And then when you look at the defensive linemen, the real guy that you could have the conversation with, in my opinion, is Jared Verse. I think Jared Verse steps in day one with the Rams and is potentially the defensive rookie of the year. I think he can have that type of impact with them. And when you project him to the Bengals, I think he's a better prospect than Myles Murphy was. So I think he could step in and be your potential edge rusher to pair with Myles Murphy of the future. But the question you have to ask yourself is, it gets hairy with how you're going to play him this year. Jared Verse is pro ready right now. You got Trey Henderson, you got Sam Hubbard, you got Miles Murphy. So what are you going to do? And then with the Jerzon Newton, sure, you could have taken him. Yes, he was a great prospect. I think he was a seal of the draft for the Commanders. I think he's going to be extremely productive. But at pick number 18, we saw how the league viewed him. He fell 18 spots after that. So in my opinion, the Amarius Mims pick, the alternative was you trade back, but then you miss out on a potential tackle of the future like Mims, or you take Jared Verse and then you have a lot more question marks about how he's going to play. And then you got to wait to round 2 to say, hey, who's going to be our right tackle of the future? So in my opinion, I think this was a very solid pick. Right now, I give it a B+, A-, but at the end of the day, these grades don't mean anything until he steps foot. So potential star right tackle, Amarius Mims.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, man. I think you got to feel very, very good about that pick. The more you look at it and how the draft shaped up.